Welcome to Farm Here Daily, a field forward podcast. I'm your host, David Geiger. Today on Farm Here Daily, with no reports out from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, we're relying more on boots on the ground. We chat with Virgil Schmitt, ISU Extension agronomist for Southeastern Iowa, about harvest progress in his area. Please be sure to like and follow the podcast as well as our social media channels at Field Forward Pod. We would love to have you join our community, keeping folks informed about what is affecting our farmers. This is Farm Here Daily. And joining me on Farm Here Daily, we're going to take a look at harvest progress here in Iowa. And to do so, we're going to chat with Virgil Schmitt of Iowa State University Extension and Outreach for Southeastern Iowa. That's your area of expertise. It's where you are. You're an agronomist over there. And Virgil, we don't really have USDA reports going out right now, so I was calling you up because I was wanting to learn a little bit about how harvest progress is going. I think we've had about 2 weeks no crop report here, and what is it like in your area? What is the progress there?
Well, progress is very good. I've had people say that they can't believe at this time of year that we're this far along. My guess is that probably soybeans are about 85% harvested at this point, a little bit more, a little bit less. And it varies a little bit from region to region. You can see quite a few fields around, drive 20 minutes, and then you don't see any that haven't been harvested yet. And the same is really kind of true with corn. It's a little bit spotty, but I think in the big picture, we're probably 70 to maybe 75% done at this point. But again, that varies a lot. Earlier this week, I was doing some driving and kind of counting fields that had been harvested and not. And the first area that I drove through, it was 80+% harvested, and then 15 minutes later, it was about 50-50. So it varies a lot in a short distance.
Now, if folks are looking at the video here, they see you're in your car. Is that what you've been up to today? Just checking that out? What's kind of the plan been around there?
Well, actually, I'm going into Ames for a meeting here, but had a chance to look at a lot of crops on the way and saw a lot of combines running, a lot of grain carts rolling, semis rolling, and so forth with the grain.
All right, now I want to go back. I just wanted to point that out because you're obviously hard at work getting your eyes on the field, boots on the ground, and I think you said 75% of corn in your area more or less looks to be done. What was that number for beans again?
I would guess probably about 85%.
85. Wow.
And
That
again,
is,
plus or minus a little bit.
yeah, that is pretty good progress for only being about halfway through October. Why is it? What's been kind of the conducive to harvest this year in your area?
Well, it's just basically been lack of rainfall. And so consequently, there's really not been much to slow most people down. There have been some pop-up showers that have occurred here and there that have knocked people out for a day or two. But in the big picture, we've been running pretty much nonstop.
So with that lack of moisture then, how is the content of the corn and beans that you're seeing over in southeastern Iowa? Is it relatively low moisture levels as well?
Yes, a lot of soybeans coming in the 9 to 10% range. Corn, mostly in the teens at this point. And so, again, things are drying. The soybeans are too dry, really, when it comes right down to it. We like to market those at about 13%, and so when you're down at 9 and 10%. Basically you're giving some soybeans away because you've got some moisture there that you could have sold as soybeans here. Corn, I have not heard how serious any of the docks are at this point in terms of moisture, but yeah, I know they're pretty low.
Yeah, I was going to note about that. Yeah, not only do you lose a little bit of weight there, but you also have potential for cracking or some debris breaking off as they're going into the bins.
Yeah, that is true. And the other thing is, particularly, if you look on the soybean side, for those areas that got a little bit of moisture, when the pods get moist again and then dry down again, a lot of times they'll start to shatter open too, and so we end up losing more to basically pre-harvest losses.
So, with all that said and done, harvest is progressing at a pretty good rate right now. And it seems like folks are really nearing completion in your part of the state. What's kind of the thoughts here then as folks are looking at those empty fields and thinking about the year? What are some of the perspectives you have as an agronomist as well?
Yeah, I think just kind of looking back, um, we had for most of the growing season people saying, "I've never seen a crop that's looked this good," and then we ended up with August, and I know, like in my own case, August took probably about 15 bushels to the acre off of my normal
Wow.
soybean yields. And I've been hearing a lot of people have been talking about corn kind of in the same way, 20 to sometimes 30%, which actually, you know, given the fact that we were expecting a bin buster, that it really ends up being disappointed, even though some of those yields are still very good, but it ends up being disappointing. That August heat just really, I think, zapped both crops, and the dryness, particularly on the soybeans, and the heat on the corn.
I think someone on my podcast in the last month or somewhere around there mentioned it felt a lot like folks were shooting for the stars and just ended up on the moon. So in retrospect, it felt bad, but you still made it.
Yeah, the problem is we don't have a whole lot of price in the market there to help
Right.
us through some of that. So yeah.
Absolutely. Virgil, as you also look from an agronomic perspective, any updates or anything new happening in the fields that folks have been calling about or you've been making folks aware of?
Yep. Well, I think first of all, about the last month, I've been having a lot of questions about weed management in pastures. That October 1st, plus or minus a couple of weeks, is really kind of a key area for managing a lot of those. And so we're just past that now. And I think kind of looking forward, we're starting to see some fertilizer going on, some lime going on, some manure that's going out. And I think one of the things that people need to keep in mind is that we would like to have for any fertilizer or manure that's got a nitrogen content, we would like to be sure that those soil temperatures are below 50 degrees and trending down. We had a little dip in soil temperature. Excuse me. We had a little bit of a dip in soil temperature earlier this week, and it got down below 50 degrees. But then 2 days later, it popped back up again. And so we want to be watching that long-term trend. It should be below 50 degrees, and the long-term trend should be on the way down here. If we go with higher temperatures, then at that point, we can convert a lot of that nitrogen into nitrates, and that makes them very leachable, so to speak here, for rains this fall or rains next spring. And so we'd like to prevent that from happening.
I was going to ask which one tends to be more likely, losing or leaching in the fall or the spring if you are applying above that 50-degree mark.
Basically, probably we're losing more in the spring and in the fall because our springs, at least over here in eastern Iowa, tend to be a little bit too wet anyhow. And so we're losing a lot in the spring. But I think the point is that as the crop starts to need it, they don't care when it's put on. The only thing they care is that's there when they need it. And so you're looking at getting into May and June when they really need it, and we want it to be there at that point in time.
Any last late season issues with insects? I know, at least in Central Iowa, I'm walking around, I'm seeing a lot of grasshoppers pop up, which is pretty normal. Any sort of issues going on insect wise in your area?
Not very many. We've had a few issues in a field here and a field there that have had some significant armyworm injury on some of the forages, but that's probably been the big one for the insect world.
Absolutely. Yeah. Army worm has been something, especially in northern parts of the state, that we've really been seeing them get into a lot of pasture areas, small grain crops. Any notes to make about cover crops this year? Are you seeing folks utilize some of their ground for cover crops more so than usual, or has this been a good year, bad year with how dry it is?
Well, I think for establishing cover crops, unless you're drilling them in, this has not been a good year because the seed tends to just sit on the surface. There's no moisture there by and large to make them germinate and so forth. Now, if we were to turn, wet here for the next 6 weeks, which it doesn't sound like we're going to, but if we were, then that may be a little bit of a different story here. But there are, at least over here in eastern Iowa, the forecast is that we should have a few days of showers here, get, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe a little bit. And then after that, um, pretty much the weather forecast is saying that no rain in sight. So,
Virgil, last question then before I let you go, and that is, what are some of the concluding thoughts as folks are headed into the ending of harvest? Are they looking forward towards anything that you're watching, you're getting questions about? Do they want to know about some of the work that they're going to already start doing next year?
yeah, they are asking about that, and I think the other thing is, from a financial standpoint, they're starting to push that pencil, at least in their mind, pretty hard. How many fertilizer dollars do I really need to spend for next year's crop? What about insecticides and fungicides? What is that threshold? When you got some pretty good prices, you can be a little bit cavalier maybe in saying, well, maybe it'll pay for itself, maybe it won't, but what the heck, we'll go for it. But when your commodity prices are low, that means the gain threshold, what yield response you're going to get, has to be higher in order to pay for those. And so then people start pushing the pencil quite hard. And so I think there's going to be a lot of that this fall. I've been hearing from a few bankers that they may be looking a little bit harder at bottom lines as they think about operating loans for next spring. And I think that's also a concern. And so people want to be sure that they do have their numbers all together for this year and be talking very nicely to their bankers.
Virgil Schmitt is an agronomist for ISU Extension for Southeastern Iowa. Virgil, as usual, thank you so much for joining us on Farm Here Daily.
It's always my pleasure.
This is Farm Here Daily. Now we're going to take a look at the marketplace. And there was some green at the close for Friday. December corn 3/4 cent up at 422.5. March rising a penny at 436.5. Soybeans in November 8 3/4 cents stronger at 1019.5, with January an increase of 8 1/4, 1036 3/4. Soybean meal in December $4.10 a ton in the green, $281 even. Soybean oil in December is 1/4 penny up at 51.13 a pound. December wheat a penny and 1/4 higher at 503 3/4, with March rising a penny and a half, 520 1/4. With hard red winter wheat in December 2 3/4 more at 491.5, and March 2 cents higher at 511. Looking at the livestock market close for Friday, there was red across the board over there. December live cattle $6.05 a hundredweight in the red, $241.82. February falling $6.72 at $242.82. Feeder cattle in November $9.25 a hundredweight down at $371.70. With January $9.25 down as well, $369.30. Lean hogs in December 22 cents a hundredweight lower at $82.37, with February falling 32 cents at $84.77 a hundredweight. That is the Friday market close. This is Farm Here Daily. And this is Farm Here Daily, a Field Forward podcast. Thank you again so much for listening. In order to continue to produce this type of local content, we would love to have you join our community. So please follow the podcast and check out our social media channels at Field Forward Pod. You can also find me on social media at Geiger Reports. Again, I am your host, David Geiger, and I'll be back again on Monday. Have a good weekend, everybody.